On February 27, 2026, retired Major General William Neil McCasland walked out of his Albuquerque home and disappeared into the Sandia Mountains. Beyond the Map documented his story in our first special report, A General That Vanished. We mapped his career, the funding chains, the disclosure connections, the anomalies, the Burleson thread, and we covered the TMB spaceships account that Sentinel Networks originally uncovered. That's the account that went silent the same morning the general vanished. We thought this was the story. On March the 18th, 2026, days after we published, an independent investigative publication called the Sentinel Network released a pattern analysis. They started with McCasland, and they didn't stop. Before we get into the names, you need to understand one institution, the Air Force Research Laboratory, the AFRL. It's the primary scientific research arm of the United States Air Force. It develops and transitions some of the most secretive aerospace technologies in the American defense arsenal. Directed energy weapons, advanced propulsion, space surveillance, electronic warfare, human performance research. If the Air Force is building something that doesn't exist yet, the AFRL is where that work happens. Its headquarters is at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base in Dayton, Ohio. It has a second major installation at Kirtland Air Force Base in Albuquerque, New Mexico, where its Directed Energy Directorate operates. Wright-Patterson has long been associated with UAP research in the public record since the 1940s. Kirtland sits adjacent to the Sandia National Laboratories, America's nuclear weapons complex. Now, these are not ordinary military bases. They're geographic nodes of America's most sensitive defense research infrastructure. From 2011 to 2013, Major General William Neil McCasland commanded the AFRL. He oversaw a combined portfolio of more than $4.4 billion in science, technology, and customer-funded research, 10,800 personnel globally. He was the man at the top of that institution for 2 years. He vanished on February 27, 2026. And here's where the Sentinel Network's investigation changes everything about what his disappearance means. He's not the only person connected with that institution who's vanished or died in the past several months. He's just the last. Monica Jacinto Reza, Technical Fellow for Materials and Process Engineering at the Aerojet Rocketdyne, Associate Fellow of the American Institute of Aeronautics and Astronautics, 30 years leading research and development teams, degrees from Columbia and UCLA, and at some point after 2023, she moved to NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory. She co-invented Mondaloy, a family of nickel-based superalloys now built into the engines, replacing Russian-made rockets for American national security launches. The patent is public record. U.S. 2010-02-66442, A1. Her alloy is in 12 components of the AR-1 engine, the preburners, the turbine rotors, the turbine housings, really every part that touches the fire. For 2 decades, every time the United States launched a spy satellite, a GPS satellite, or a military communications satellite, it did so on a Russian engine, the RD-180, built in Moscow. Mondaloy was the fix, the material breakthrough that finally made a domestic replacement possible. On June the 22nd, 2025, Reza was hiking with a companion in the Angeles National Forests. She was 30 feet behind that person that she was with. Her companion turned around and she was gone. She waved before she vanished, That wave is the last confirmed contact that anyone has had with Monica Jacinto Reza. Search teams deployed, helicopters, FLIR, thermal imaging technology, scent dogs. The dogs hit a dead end at a beanie that doesn't match her known trajectory. FLIR found nothing. No body was recovered. 4 days into the search, while helicopters are still in the air, she was declared dead and listed as having a biodegradable burial. That's in the L.A. Sheriff's Department's Homicide Bureau. Find a grave memorial. 4 days later, 800 miles away, Melissa Casias. Los Alamos National Laboratory employee. She served on the Northern New Mexico Citizens Advisory Board for Environmental Management at the LANA, participating in official Department of Energy meetings on legacy radioactive waste remediation, environmental monitoring, and federal cleanup budgets at America's premier nuclear weapons facility.
Melissa, would you like to say hello, something, and then we'll move to Mark's question?
I'm Melissa Casias, and I'm from here in Taos, New Mexico. Glad to be here.
Her name is on the official Department of Energy correspondence. On June the 26th, 2025, Casias drove her husband Mark to work at the LANL. Both of them work there. He watched her badge into the facility. She then drove home and told her family she'd forgotten her credentials and would work remotely. Her daughter Sierra flagged this immediately. She couldn't have forgotten her badge. She used it. She badged in to the facility. Around 12:50 in the afternoon, she brought her daughter a sandwich at the Cafe Taos Plaza. Calm, normal, and then she was last seen on surveillance footage walking along eastbound on New Mexico 518, carrying a backpack, headed toward the Carson National Forest. When her daughter came home from work, the car was in the driveway. Inside, her mother's keys, wallet, purse, personal phone, and her government-issued Los Alamos National Labs work phone. Both phones had been factory reset. She has not been found. The New Mexico State Police investigation remains open. October 25, 2025. One night, 3 people. Jacob Prichard, age 34, was an acquisition project manager at the AFRL's Sensors Directorate at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. That directorate develops technologies for air and space reconnaissance, surveillance, precision engagement, and electronic warfare. Space-based sensors. His job was managing the advanced research programs that produce those systems. First Lieutenant Jaime Gustitus, 25, was an operations research analyst at the AFRL's 711th Human Performance Wing. Air Force Academy graduate in 2022, Master of Science in Operations Research from the Air Force Institute of Technology, top secret SCI clearance. 3 years out of the Academy. The kind of person the Air Force spends a decade and millions of dollars building. Jaime Prichard, age 33, worked within the Air Force Life Cycle Management Center, finance specialist, earning her MBA while working full-time. A mother. That night, Jacob Prichard killed his wife at their home in Huber Heights, Ohio, and placed her body in the trunk of their car. He drove down to Sugar Creek Township, broke into the apartment of Lieutenant Gustitus, and shot her to death. He then drove to the West Milton Municipal Building, parked in the safety exchange zone, opened the trunk so responding officers would find Jaime, and killed himself on camera. The investigation is being run by the Ohio Bureau of Criminal Investigation, local police across 3 counties, and the Air Force Office of Special Investigations. The AFOSI, not base security, not local PD, the Air Force's Counterintelligence and Criminal Investigation Agency, the unit that handles espionage, counterintelligence threats, and criminal matters affecting Air Force operations. Months after that incident, authorities have explicitly stated they have not determined the motive. There's no confirmed affair, no restraining order, no documented history of domestic violence. The public record contains no explanation for why Jacob Prichard killed a top-secret SCI-cleared operations research analyst with his own wife on a Saturday night in October. Carl Grillmair, nearly 30 years at Caltech's Infrared Processing and Analysis Center, IPAC for short. Quality Assurance Scientist and Pipeline Operator for the NEOWISE Science Data Center. Instrument Characterization Specialist for the NEO Surveyor, the first space telescope built specifically to find objects that could hit Earth. 147 peer-reviewed papers. NASA Exceptional Scientific Achievement Medal in 2011. The algorithms Grillmair built to do one thing: find a dark, cold object against the black of space using nothing but the heat it borrowed from the sun. That's how you find an asteroid. It's also the same physics used to track adversarial satellites and hypersonic weapons. The Air Force Research Laboratory's own directorates fund research into the long wavelength infrared detection in the same spectral bands that Grillmair's telescope operates in. Planetary defense and missile defense are the same physics problems with different names. On December 20th, 2025, Grillmair spotted someone on his property who didn't belong there. He called law enforcement. Deputies arrived and found a man named Freddie Snyder in the area carrying a loaded, unregistered rifle. On questioning, the man said that he was headed to the local post office. Well, the property records show Grillmair's home and the local post office are in opposite directions from Snyder's address. The man lied about where he was going. Snyder was arrested, charged with carrying a loaded firearm and attempted escape from jail. 2 felonies, an armed man who lied about his destination, caught on the property of a scientist who works on classified infrared sensing data. On February the 5th, 2026, both charges were dismissed under the California Penal Code 1385. Judicial discretion in furtherance of justice. 11 days later, Snyder was back on Grillmair's porch with a gun. Grillmair was shot dead at approximately 6:10 in the morning, and he was 67 years old. Snyder's arraignment is scheduled for March the 26th. There's no motive for the killing that's been publicly disclosed. Detectives say they don't believe the 2 men knew each other. Let's read that sequence one more time. An armed trespasser caught on the property, allegedly lied about his destination. He's arrested. Charges are dismissed. Returned, apparently killed the scientist, and no one can explain why any of that happened. February 27th, 2026, 8 months after Monica Jacinto Reza, 8 months after Melissa Casias, 4 months after the Wright-Patterson triple homicide, 11 days after Carl Grillmair was shot on his porch. General William Neil McCasland, former commander of the AFRL, former director of the nation's most sensitive classified aerospace research programs, a former DoD Special Programs Director overseeing special access programs at the Pentagon, walked out of his home in Albuquerque, New Mexico, and has not been seen since. Left behind his phone, his prescription glasses, which were worn in every recent photograph of him, his wearable devices, things an avid outdoorsman does not normally leave behind. Missing from the home, his wallet, his hiking boots, a light green outdoor shirt, and a .38 caliber revolver with a leather holster he carried regularly. The FBI Albuquerque field office joined the search. Kirtland Air Force Base coordinated. The Air Force Office of Special Investigations, the same agency that took the Wright-Patterson murder investigation, was confirmed by McCasland's own family as being involved. As of the day of this episode being recorded, General McCasland has not been found. 6 people, 9 months, and here's what connects them. Reza invented the alloy. Dallas Hardwick, her mentor and co-inventor, qualified the alloy at the AFRL's Materials Directorate at Wright-Patterson under McCasland's command. McCasland's budget funded the programs that depended on Reza's metal. All 3 of them were on the same program at the same time. Hardwick, the mentor and co-inventor, retired in 2012 and was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer and died on January the 5th, 2014. The Sentinel Network's investigation noted that she's the only person in this chain whose death is confirmed. Also the only one whose death left almost no American public record. There's no U.S. obituary been found, no find a grave entry, no AFRL memorial notice. The only documentation is a memorial published by a university in Australia a decade after she died. The Wright-Patterson triple worked at the same installation where Hardwick spent her career, and McCasland held a command authority at that facility. Air Force OSI, the Air Force's counterintelligence agency, took that investigation. Grillmair worked at the Jet Propulsion Laboratory and Caltech, the same institutional corridor where Reza was working when she vanished. His infrared detection work intersects with the same classified defense physics pipeline that AFRL funds. Casias worked at Los Alamos, 100 miles north of Kirtland Air Force Base, where McCasland once commanded operations. The Los Alamos National Laboratory, or LANL, and AFRL share extensive programmatic overlap in advanced materials, directed energy, and weapons physics. Now look at the geography. Reza vanished in Los Angeles County. Grillmair was killed in Los Angeles County, both in the shadow of the Jet Propulsion Laboratory and the Caltech corridor, where America's planetary defense infrastructure is built. McCasland vanished in Albuquerque, home of the Kirtland Air Force Base and Sandia National Laboratories. The Wright-Patterson deaths were in Dayton, Ohio, the AFRL headquarters. Southern California, New Mexico, Ohio. These are not random locations. They're 3 geographic nodes of American defense aerospace research. That's the same corridor where the AFRL lives. And here's the detail that the Sentinel Network identifies that should keep every investigative journalist in America awake at night. Nobody is looking at these deaths or disappearances as a list. Los Angeles County Sheriff's Homicide Bureau has Reza. Bernalillo County Sheriff and the FBI have McCasland. L.A. County Homicide has Grillmair. Ohio Bureau of Criminal Investigation and Air Force OSI and the 3 county police agencies have the Wright-Patterson triple homicide. New Mexico State Police has Casias. 6 separate jurisdictions, 0 cross-referencing mandated. The structural architecture of the response guarantees that no one agency will ever see the names together unless someone builds that list independently. The Sentinel Network built it. Beyond the Map is documenting. Now, I want to address something directly. One of the people on this list, only one, has a documented on-the-record connection to UAP research, and that is McCasland himself. The Podesta emails, Tom DeLong, Wright-Patterson, the Grush and Burleson threads we documented in our first episode, A General Vanishes. The others don't seem to have documented UAP connections in the public record. Beyond the Map is not asserting that they do. What we are asserting is this. The Air Force Research Lab is the institution that develops and transitions the most sensitive aerospace technologies in the American defense arsenal. Multiple credentialed witnesses included David Grush, who testified under oath before Congress, and Dylan Borland, who testified before the House Oversight Committee in September of 2025, have placed the legacy UAP program, including crash retrieval and reverse engineering operations, inside the classified special access program infrastructure that AFRL oversees and funds. Borland said specifically that people inside the legacy programs had lost their clearances, had their careers destroyed, and had their homes broken into, and that a group of them were so afraid for their lives that they needed a dead man's switch to feel safe enough to have one person speak. Grush testified that the 40 people he interviewed inside the program, 10 to 12 of them had concerns about killings. He would only provide those details in a classified setting. Now, we're not saying that people on this list were part of the legacy program. We are saying that the institution at the center of every case in this episode is the same institution that multiple credentialed witnesses have placed at the center of the most sensitive and most suppressed programs in the American defense apparatus. Now, that's not a conclusion. It is a question the documented record forces you to ask. The Sentinel Network drew a comparison that, here at Beyond the Map, we think deserves attention. Between 1982 and 1990, approximately 25 British scientists and engineers connected to GEC Marconi died under suspicious circumstances. Most worked on strategic defense initiative related to the Stingray torpedo project. Each death had an individual explanation. The UK Ministry of Defense maintained the deaths were unrelated. A minister acknowledged it was, quote, odd that all were computer scientists working in the defense field, but, quote, there's where any relationship stops. No centralized investigation was ever conducted. The cases were never solved. The structural architecture is identical to what we're documenting now. Defense-connected individuals, anomalous circumstances, individual explanations that individually satisfy, and an institutional posture that structurally prevents pattern recognition by distributing cases across jurisdictions that never talk to each other. History has a name for this: the Marconi scientists. And we're not saying this is the same thing. We are saying the structure is the same. And we are saying that the Marconi cases were never solved precisely because no one ever looked at them as a pattern until it was too late. Here's what the documented record shows. Monica Jacinto Reza, inventor of the alloy enabling American independence from Russian rocket engines, vanished from a ridgeline in clear weather on June 22, 2025. Monica Jacinto Reza, inventor of the alloy enabling American independence from Russian rocket engines, vanished from a ridgeline in clear weather. She was declared deceased while helicopters were still searching 4 days later. No body's ever been found. Melissa Casias, a Los Alamos National Laboratory employee who sat on a Department of Energy advisory board, badged into a nuclear weapons facility, fabricated a reason to leave, factory reset her government-issued phone, and apparently walked into the wilderness 4 days later. She has not been seen since. 3 employees of an Air Force research laboratory at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base died on a single night in October of 2025. The Air Force's counterintelligence agency is running the investigation, and no motive has been stated or established. Carl Grillmair, a Caltech astronomer who built the infrared detection pipeline for America's planetary defense infrastructure, was killed on his porch on February 16, 2026, 11 days after charges against his alleged killer were dismissed by a judge. Major General William Neil McCasland, former commander of the AFRL, former DoD Special Programs Director, the man whose career sits at the intersection of every program these people worked on or were funded by, vanished from Albuquerque, New Mexico on February 27, 2026. 6 people, 9 months. One institution at the center of every one of those cases. The Sentinel Network built this list. Beyond the Map has reviewed their sourcing extensively against the primary records, the patent filings, the congressional testimony, the DTIC records, law enforcement press releases, Department of Energy advisory board rosters, and federal contract databases. Every name on the list is verified. Nobody with subpoena power is looking at this as a list. No single agency has jurisdiction over all these cases. The structural architecture of the response guarantees that the pattern stays invisible unless someone outside the system documents it. Sentinel's documenting it. We're documenting. Melissa Casias worked at America's premier nuclear weapons facility. She factory reset both her personal phone and her government-issued work phone before she walked into the wilderness. William Neil McCasland ran the most sensitive classified aerospace research program in the American defense arsenal. He left his phone and his fitness wearable and every device that could locate him sitting in his home before he vanished. These are not people who forgot their phones. These are people who spent their careers in environments where operational security is not just a suggestion, it's survival. They knew exactly what leaving those devices behind meant. Now, we're not telling you what to conclude from that. We're telling you what the record shows. If you have information about the disappearance of Monica Jacinto Reza, contact LA Sheriff's Department Homicide Bureau Missing Persons Unit at this number. If you have information about William Neil McCasland, text Bernalillo County Sheriff's Office, text BCSO 2847411, or call the number listed on the screen. If you have information about the death of Carl Grillmair, contact the Sheriff's Homicide Bureau at the number listed here. If you have information about Wright-Patterson incident, contact Lieutenant Jason Moore of the Miami County Sheriff's Office at this number. If you have information about Melissa Casias, contact New Mexico State Police at the number on the screen.